The Sterling Genetics breeding facility outside Houston, Texas, occupied 43 acres of industrial farmland where cattle were raised not as animals, but as profit margins. Row after row of metal enclosures housed prize bulls, each one meticulously tracked for weight gain, temperament scores, and reproductive success rates. Everything was calculated, measured, quantified. In pen 47, a 3-year-old Brahman bull named Atlas stood alone, his once powerful frame now gaunt, his ribs visible beneath a dull, patchy coat. His dark eyes held something the facility managers didn't measure: intelligence, awareness, and a deep exhaustion that came from months of neglect. Dr. Marcus Rivera, the facility's lead geneticist, reviewed Atlas's file with mounting frustration. "This bull is costing us more than he's producing. 3 failed breeding attempts this quarter. Weight loss of 80 pounds in 6 months. Aggressive behavior toward handlers. He's done." "What do you want me to do with him?" asked Blake Morrison, the facility's manager, a man more concerned with numbers than the animals under his care. "Cull list. Sell him for whatever we can get. He's taking up space that could house a profitable animal." What the file didn't show, what nobody had bothered to document, was that Atlas had been systematically neglected. His feed rations had been cut to save costs. His pen, barely large enough for an animal his size, had become a cramped prison. He'd been used for breeding attempts while sick, his illness ignored because treatment cost money. The aggressive behavior noted in his file. That was Atlas defending himself when handlers used electric prods excessively, when they struck him for moving too slowly, when they treated him not as a living being, but as a malfunctioning machine. Atlas had learned that humans meant pain, confinement, and hunger, so he'd stopped cooperating. And in a facility that measured value only in profit, a bull who wouldn't cooperate had no value at all. The auction notice went out 3 days later. Brahman bull, 3 years old, 1,800 LABs, underweight, aggressive temperament, selling asses for meat or salvage breeding. Starting bid, $400. 30 miles away, in the quiet rural community of Cypress, north of Houston, the Tavares family was struggling with their own crisis. Gabriel Tavares, 41, ran a small family ranch, nothing like the industrial operations that dominated Texas agriculture. His 20 acres supported a modest herd of 15 cattle, some chickens, and 2 horses. It was enough to supplement his income from construction work, enough to teach his children about responsibility and hard work. But his son Mateo, 8 years old, had been struggling. Diagnosed with autism at age 4, Mateo found the world overwhelming, too loud, too chaotic, too unpredictable. He spoke rarely, avoided eye contact, and spent most of his time alone, arranging his toy cars in precise patterns or watching the cattle from the fence. Gabriel's wife, Anna, had tried everything. Therapy, special schools, sensory tools. Some things helped, but Mateo remained locked in his own world, unreachable most of the time. The therapist suggested animal therapy, Anna said one evening, as they reviewed their finances at the kitchen table. She thinks working with animals might help Mateo connect. "But the programs are so expensive, Gabriel. We can't afford it right now." Gabriel stared at the bills spread before them. Medical expenses, ranch maintenance, mortgage. What if we didn't need a program? What if we brought the animal here? "You mean like a therapy dog?" "I was thinking bigger. We need another bull anyway. Duke's getting old and I need to start building the herd back up." He pulled up the livestock auction website on his phone, scrolling through listings. "If we found the right animal, one that's calm and patient." That's when he saw the listing for Atlas. The low price caught his attention first. $400 was almost suspiciously cheap for a 3-year-old bull, even an underweight one. But it was the photos that made him pause. Most auction photos showed animals in profile, emphasizing size and muscle structure. But Atlas's photos were clearly hastily taken. The bull standing in a filthy pen, his body thin, his expression haunted. Gabriel recognized that look. He'd seen it in rescue animals before. This wasn't a mean bull. This was a traumatized one. "Anna, look at this." She leaned over, frowning at the screen. "Gabriel, it says aggressive temperament. And look how thin he is. That's not a healthy animal." "Exactly. Which means nobody else will bid on him. Which means he'll go to slaughter." Gabriel met his wife's eyes. I know we can't save every animal, but this one, I think there's something there. Something worth saving. Anna looked at the photo again, then at the doorway where Mateo sat on the floor, lining up his toy cars with intense focus, lost in his own world. Two isolated beings, she thought. One human, one animal. Both misunderstood. $400, she asked quietly. Plus transport, maybe another 100. She was silent for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. But Gabriel, if he's truly aggressive, if he's dangerous, I'll know within a week. If it doesn't work, we'll find him a good sanctuary, I promise. The auction was online, ending at noon the next day. Gabriel watched nervously as the clock ticked down, expecting other bids to come in at the last minute. But nobody wanted an aggressive, underweight bull from a facility known for poor animal welfare. At 12:01 p.m., Gabriel Tavares became the owner of Atlas for exactly $400. Dr. Rivera signed the release papers without ceremony. He's your problem now. Good luck. Blake Morrison had the bull loaded into Gabriel's trailer with rough efficiency, using electric prods when Atlas hesitated, cursing when the bull flinched away from the ramp. Stubborn bastard, Morrison muttered. You'll probably end up shooting him. Gabriel bit back his anger. I think he's just scared. Bulls don't get scared. They get mean. Morrison slapped the trailer door shut. Your funeral. During the 30-mile drive to Cyprus, Gabriel checked his rearview mirror frequently. Atlas stood in the trailer, swaying with the motion, his eyes visible through the slats, watchful, wary, waiting for the next source of pain. It's going to be different now, Gabriel said aloud, though the bull couldn't hear him. I promise you, it's going to be different. When they arrived at the Tavares ranch, the sun was setting, painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink. Gabriel had prepared a large paddock, clean, spacious, with fresh water and good hay. Nothing like the cramped metal pen Atlas had known for so long. Gabriel opened the trailer carefully, stepping back to give the bull space. For a long moment, Atlas didn't move. Then, slowly, cautiously, he emerged. The bull stopped at the edge of the trailer, his head lifting as he scented the air. Fresh grass. Open space. No metal walls closing him in. His body trembled, not with aggression, but with something closer to disbelief. Gabriel stayed perfectly still, speaking softly. This is home now. You're safe here. Atlas took one step forward, then another. He walked into the paddock, his movements stiff and uncertain, as if expecting the space to suddenly shrink, the freedom to be a trick. From the porch, Anna watched with Mateo beside her. The boy, who usually paid little attention to new things, was staring at Atlas with unusual focus. Big cow, Mateo said quietly, a rare verbalization. That's Atlas, Anna told him gently. He's going to live with us now. Mateo watched as the bull walked slowly to the water trough, drinking deeply for the first time in who knew how long. Atlas is sad, the boy observed. Anna blinked in surprise. Mateo rarely commented on emotions, struggled to recognize them even in human faces. But somehow he'd seen what was in that bull's eyes. Yes, sweetheart, Atlas is sad. But maybe we can help him feel better. In the paddock, Atlas finished drinking and turned toward the house. His eyes found the small boy on the porch, and for just a moment, bull and child locked gazes. Neither of them knew it yet, but that moment was the beginning of something extraordinary. A connection that would not only save Atlas from a system that had tried to break him, but would also unlock something in Mateo that no therapy had been able to reach. Because sometimes, the rejected and the misunderstood find each other. And together they prove that value can't be measured in profit margins, only in the quiet language of hearts that refuse to give up. The first week was difficult. Atlas barely ate, standing motionless in the center of the paddock, his eyes tracking every movement with suspicion. Gabriel checked on him every few hours, leaving fresh hay and grain at the fence line, but never entering the enclosure, giving the traumatized bull the space he desperately needed. He needs time, Gabriel explained to Anna. He's been hurt, starved, confined. We can't rush this. The paddock Gabriel had prepared was substantial, 2 acres with secure fencing, a shelter, and a water trough. Atlas could move freely, something he hadn't been able to do in months at the breeding facility. But freedom, for an animal who'd known only confinement and pain, was almost too much to process. Gabriel established a routine. Morning and evening, he'd bring fresh feed, always staying outside the fence, always speaking in calm tones. "Morning, Atlas. Here's your breakfast. Take your time." At first, Atlas wouldn't approach until Gabriel had left completely. But slowly, over days, the bull began to recognize that this human didn't carry electric prods, didn't strike him, didn't cause pain. The distance between them decreased incrementally, 10 feet, then 8, then 5. On the fourth day, something unexpected happened. Mateo, who'd been watching from the house, walked to the fence line carrying his favorite toy, a small red truck he took everywhere. He stood at the fence, silent as always, and began rolling the truck along the bottom rail. The repetitive sound caught Atlas's attention. The bull, who'd been grazing 30 feet away, lifted his head and watched. Mateo continued his ritual, completely absorbed, humming softly. Atlas took a few steps closer, then stopped. The boy wasn't threatening, wasn't loud, just present, predictable in his repetition. "Mateo, stay at the fence," Anna called from the porch, her voice tight with worry. "Don't climb it, don't reach through." But Mateo seemed to understand instinctively what the adults were still learning, that Atlas needed space and respect. The boy continued playing at the fence line, never attempting to touch the bull, never invading his territory. And Atlas cautiously moved closer. Not approaching the fence directly, but grazing within 20 feet of it, his ears constantly swiveling toward the sound of the rolling truck and the boy's quiet humming. "Gabriel," Anna whispered urgently when he came home that evening. "Mateo's been at the fence for 2 hours. The bull is... I don't know how to explain it. He's aware of Mateo, watching him, but not threatening." Gabriel observed carefully from a distance. Mateo sat on the ground outside the fence, arranging small stones in patterns. Atlas grazed nearby, close enough to be called near, but maintaining a clear boundary. The bull would occasionally glance at the boy, then return to grazing. "They're coexisting," Gabriel said quietly. "Mateo's not demanding anything from Atlas, and Atlas isn't feeling pressured. It's parallel play almost." Anna recognized the term from Mateo's therapy. Parallel play, when children play near each other without direct interaction, a developmental step towards social connection. Over the following weeks, Gabriel continued Atlas's rehabilitation. The bull's weight slowly returned. His coat improved, but Gabriel remained cautious, always aware that Atlas was a large, potentially dangerous animal who'd been traumatized and might react unpredictably. He installed a double fence system in one area, 2 fences 6 feet apart, creating a safe space where Mateo could be near Atlas without any risk of direct contact. The boy would sit in that buffer zone, playing with his toys, talking to himself, completely comfortable. And Atlas would position himself on the other side, grazing peacefully, occasionally glancing at the boy, his presence calm but boundaries maintained. "The therapist says this is helping Mateo more than any intervention we've tried," Anna told Gabriel one evening. "Just being near Atlas, having that consistent, non-demanding presence. Mateo's talking more at school, making eye contact. The teacher is amazed." Gabriel watched through the kitchen window as Mateo sat in the buffer zone, reading a book aloud in his halting way. Atlas stood 20 feet away inside his paddock, chewing cud, his ear angled toward the boy's voice. "I think it's helping both of them," Gabriel said. "Atlas is learning that not all humans hurt, and Mateo is learning that he can connect with another living being without pressure to perform or mask his autism." What Gabriel had started to notice, what impressed him most, was Atlas's intelligence and awareness. When Gabriel worked on fence repairs, Atlas would watch from a distance, tracking the work with clear interest. When the other cattle were moved between pastures, Atlas observed their patterns, understanding the routines, and when Mateo was present, Atlas's entire demeanor changed. He was calmer, more settled, as if the boy's quiet presence soothed something in the traumatized bull. Gabriel began documenting Atlas's behavior, not for breeding records or profit calculations, but out of genuine fascination. This bull, labeled aggressive and low value by the facility, was demonstrating problem-solving, emotional awareness, and a level of intelligence that industrial agriculture never bothered to measure. One afternoon, Vicente came by to check on Atlas's progress. The old rancher leaned against the outer fence, watching as Atlas grazed near where Mateo was drawing with sidewalk chalk on the concrete pad outside the paddock. That facility threw away something special, Vicente observed. They only saw numbers. Didn't see what that bull could be given a chance. They measured the wrong things, Gabriel agreed. They measured profit. They should have measured potential. By the fourth week, Atlas had transformed physically. His weight was healthy, his coat gleamed, his eyes had lost that haunted look. But more importantly, he'd found his place in the small herd. Duke, the older bull, had accepted him. The cows respected his presence. Atlas had gone from isolated prisoner to integrated herd member. And always, when Mateo was near, safely outside the fence respecting boundaries, Atlas was aware, watchful, present. What nobody realized yet was that Atlas's awareness, his intelligence, his protective instincts were about to be tested in a way that would prove beyond doubt that the breeding facility had been catastrophically wrong about this bull's value. Some animals are meant for profit. Others are meant for purpose. Atlas, rejected and discarded, was about to demonstrate which category he truly belonged to. 3 months after Atlas arrived at the Tavares ranch, Gabriel made a decision that went against every warning from the Sterling Genetics facility. He introduced Atlas to the breeding program with his small herd of cows. "Are you sure about this?" Anna asked, watching nervously as Gabriel prepared to move Atlas into the larger pasture with the 15 cows. The facility said he failed 3 breeding attempts. The facility also starved him, confined him, and used him when he was sick, Gabriel countered. "Let's see what happens when he's healthy and not traumatized." Vicente, who'd been ranching for 40 years, nodded in agreement. A bull who's stressed, malnourished, and in pain won't breed successfully. It's not rocket science. The facility blamed Atlas for their own neglect. The integration was careful and gradual. Gabriel moved Atlas into the main pasture during the day, monitoring closely for any signs of aggression or stress. But Atlas's behavior surprised them all. Instead of the chaotic, stressed breeding attempts described in the Sterling facility reports, Atlas was methodical and respectful. He observed the herd dynamics, deferred to Duke in matters of territory, and approached breeding with what Gabriel could only describe as patience. "I've never seen a bull act like this," Vicente admitted, watching Atlas interact with the cows. "He's reading their signals, waiting for the right timing. Most young bulls are all aggression and impatience. Atlas is strategic." Within 2 months, the results were undeniable. Gabriel's veterinarian confirmed pregnancies in 12 of the 15 cows, an 80% success rate that exceeded even optimistic expectations. "This is the bull Sterling called a breeding failure?" Dr. Sarah Kim, the vet, asked incredulously, reviewing the ultrasound results. "Gabriel, do you understand what these numbers mean? Commercial breeding operations celebrate 60% conception rates. You're at 80% with a bull they literally threw away." Gabriel felt vindication mixed with anger. They destroyed his value, then blamed him for it. Over the following months, as the cows' pregnancies progressed, Gabriel ran the numbers. Each calf, once weaned and sold, would bring between $800 to $1,200 depending on quality and market prices. 12 calves meant potential gross revenue of $10,000 to $14,000 from a bull he'd purchased for $400. But the financial return was only part of the story. The calves Atlas sired showed exceptional characteristics: strong frames, calm temperaments, healthy vigor. These weren't just profitable calves. They were quality animals that would command premium prices. "Word's getting around," Vicente told Gabriel one afternoon. "Talk to Rodriguez at the feed store. He wants to know if you'll offer breeding services. His operation lost their primary bull last month." Gabriel was cautious. "Atlas isn't ready for that kind of stress, and I won't rent him out like a piece of equipment." But as Atlas continued to thrive, his weight now a healthy 2,100 pounds, his coat gleaming, his demeanor calm and confident, Gabriel reconsidered. Not commercial breeding contracts, but carefully selected arrangements with small ranchers he trusted. Fair compensation, respectful handling, no rushing or forcing. The first external breeding arrangement was with Vicente's small herd. Atlas was transported the short distance, allowed to acclimate, and given time to adjust. The result? 5 pregnancies from 6 cows, and Vicente singing Atlas's praises throughout the county. Within a year, Atlas had sired 32 calves across 4 small ranches. The revenue was substantial enough that Gabriel could reduce his construction work hours and focus more on the ranch. But more importantly, Atlas had developed a reputation. People are calling him the Miracle Bull, Anna reported, showing Gabriel social media posts from local farming groups. There's a waiting list of ranchers who want breeding services. Gabriel watched Atlas through the window. The bull was in his paddock, grazing peacefully. Mateo sat in the buffer zone reading aloud, and Atlas, as always, had positioned himself nearby, not close enough to threaten, but close enough to be present. "He's not a miracle," Gabriel said quietly. "He's what he always was, a good bull with excellent genetics. Sterling just couldn't see past their own failures." The irony wasn't lost on Gabriel. Sterling Genetics, with their advanced facilities and multi-million-dollar operation, had declared Atlas low profit and discarded him. Meanwhile, Gabriel's modest 20-acre ranch was generating substantial income from the same bull, simply by treating him with basic dignity and care. But Gabriel's pride in Atlas's breeding success was about to be overshadowed by something far more important. The bull's intelligence, his awareness, his protective instincts, qualities that couldn't be measured in pregnancy rates or profit margins, were about to reveal themselves in a moment of crisis that would prove Atlas's true value transcended anything that could be calculated on a spreadsheet. The calves were profitable. The breeding reputation was growing. But what Atlas would do next would show that some animals are valuable not for what they produce, but for what they protect. And that moment was coming soon. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, when the Texas heat still hung heavy despite the calendar promising fall. Gabriel was 30 miles away at a construction site. Anna had driven to Houston for a doctor's appointment, leaving Mateo in the care of their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd agreed to watch him for 2 hours. Mrs. Chen, 74 and kind-hearted, had raised 5 children of her own. But she didn't fully understand Mateo's autism, how the boy needed routines, predictability, and his safe spaces. Mateo had been coloring at the kitchen table when he suddenly stood up and walked toward the back door. "Going to see Atlas," he announced, using his flat, matter-of-fact tone. "Honey, your mama said to stay inside," Mrs. Chen called from the living room where she was folding laundry. But Mateo was already outside, drawn by routine and comfort. He walked to the double-fence buffer zone, his safe space, and sat down with his book. Atlas, grazing in the far pasture with the pregnant cows, lifted his head immediately. The bull began walking toward the fence line where Mateo sat, his usual pattern, maintaining distance but acknowledging the boy's presence. Mrs. Chen, realizing Mateo had left, hurried outside. "Mateo, come back inside, sweetie. Your mama will be upset." But when she tried to approach the buffer zone to retrieve him, Mateo did what he sometimes did when overwhelmed. He bolted. Not toward the house, but away from the unfamiliar pressure, straight toward the main pasture gate that Gabriel had left partially unlatched while moving hay earlier. Mateo slipped through the gap before Mrs. Chen could stop him. He ran into the pasture, disoriented and panicking, heading directly toward the herd of pregnant cows who were resting under the shade trees. The cows, startled by the sudden intrusion and the woman's shouting, scrambled to their feet. 1,200-pound animals, heavy with calves, moving in confusion. Mateo was directly in their path, frozen now, overwhelmed by the noise and movement. Mrs. Chen screamed, unable to reach him in time. Atlas was 50 yards away. But the moment Mateo entered the pasture, the bull's entire demeanor changed. His head lifted sharply, his body went rigid, and he made a sound Gabriel had never heard before, a deep, commanding bellow that cut through the chaos. Then Atlas charged, not toward Mateo, toward the space between the boy and the panicked cows. His massive body moved with surprising speed, placing himself as a physical barrier. The cows, responding to the lead bull's authority, immediately altered their direction, flowing around Atlas's position rather than trampling through it. Atlas stood over Mateo, who'd collapsed to his knees, his body creating a protective fortress. The bull's head lowered, his presence commanding, keeping the nervous herd at bay while Mrs. Chen finally reached the boy. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" she sobbed, pulling Mateo toward her. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know he'd run." But Atlas didn't move away. He maintained his position until Mrs. Chen had Mateo safely outside the fence. Only then did the bull step back, his sides heaving, his eyes still tracking the boy to ensure he was truly safe. Vicente, who'd heard the commotion from his property, arrived just as they secured the gate. "Jesus Cristo," he breathed. "Did that bull just—" "He saved Mateo," Mrs. Chen whispered, still shaking. "That boy would have been trampled. The cows were panicked, and Atlas just— he put himself between them." When Gabriel returned an hour later, Mrs. Chen tearfully explained what happened. Gabriel found Mateo in his room, overwhelmed and nonverbal, clutching his red truck. But the boy was uninjured. Not a scratch, not a bruise. Gabriel walked to the pasture. Atlas stood near the fence, still alert, still watchful. When he saw Gabriel, the bull approached the fence line, something he rarely did. "You protected my son," Gabriel said, his voice breaking. "The facility said you were worthless, aggressive, dangerous." He placed his hand on the fence post as close as he dared get. "But you're not any of those things. You're extraordinary." Atlas stood quietly, his dark eyes holding Gabriel's. In that moment, the rancher understood something profound. Sterling Genetics had measured Atlas in conception rates and weight gain, but they'd completely missed what made this bull truly valuable: his intelligence, his protective instincts, his capacity to assess danger and act with purpose. The breeding success was impressive, the profit margins were excellent. But what Atlas had just done, calculating risk in seconds, positioning himself strategically, controlling a panicked herd while protecting a vulnerable child, that was priceless. The story of Atlas saving Mateo spread through the local ranching community within days. Vicente told everyone at the feed store. Mrs. Chen, still shaken, shared it at church. Within a week, a reporter from the Houston Chronicle called requesting an interview. "Rejected Bull Becomes Hero. Atlas's Journey from Worthless to Invaluable," read the headline. The article detailed Sterling Genetics' decision to discard Atlas, Gabriel's $400 investment, the bull's remarkable breeding success, and finally, the moment he'd protected Mateo from the panicked herd. The response was overwhelming. Gabriel received calls from ranchers across Texas wanting to purchase Atlas's offspring. Universities requested to study his intelligence and protective behavior. Animal welfare organizations cited his story as evidence that industrial breeding facilities prioritized profit over proper animal care. But the call that mattered most came from Sterling Genetics itself. Dr. Rivera, the geneticist who'd signed Atlas's disposal papers, requested a visit. Gabriel agreed, curious but wary. When Rivera arrived, the man looked uncomfortable, humbled. "I need to see him," Rivera said simply. They walked to the pasture where Atlas grazed peacefully, his coat gleaming, his powerful frame healthy and confident. Nearby, Mateo sat in his buffer zone, reading aloud. The bull's ear was angled toward the boy's voice. Rivera was silent for a long moment. "We made a catastrophic error, not just with Atlas, with our entire approach. We measured reproduction rates and weight gain, but we never measured intelligence, temperament, adaptability, or protective instincts. We treated animals like machines and blamed them when our system failed. You starved him, confined him, and used him while he was sick," Gabriel said flatly. "Then called him worthless when he couldn't perform under those conditions." "You're right, and I'm implementing changes at the facility. Better nutrition protocols, larger enclosures, health screenings before breeding attempts. It won't undo what happened to Atlas, but maybe it will prevent it from happening to others." Gabriel nodded slowly. "Atlas isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. But I'll consider allowing genetic sampling for your program, if the proceeds go to animal welfare organizations." 6 months later, Atlas's offspring were commanding premium prices across 3 states. The Tavares ranch had expanded to 40 acres. Gabriel had quit construction entirely, focusing on sustainable ranching practices that prioritized animal welfare. But the most important change was Mateo. The boy, now 9, spoke in full sentences regularly. He'd made friends at school. His therapist attributed much of his progress to the consistent, non-demanding presence of Atlas. "Some people measure value in dollars," Gabriel told a group of agricultural students who'd come to study Atlas. "But real value, the kind that matters, can't be quantified." It's in moments of crisis, in bonds that transcend species, in the courage to protect the vulnerable. Atlas stood in the pasture, surrounded by his growing herd, watching over the small boy who sat reading at the fence. The bull that Sterling Genetics had declared low profit and discarded had generated over $45,000 in breeding revenue, saved a child's life, and sparked industry-wide conversations about animal welfare. But if you asked Gabriel what Atlas was worth, he'd say something no spreadsheet could capture: priceless. Because some values can't be measured. They can only be witnessed in the quiet moments when a rejected bull stands guard over a vulnerable child, proving that what the world discards as worthless might actually be exactly what it needs most. This bull was rejected from the breeding program for low profit, until one moment proved them wrong.